Eric Donovan stared at the data pad in his hand, his face growing paler by the second. After 15 years as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, he thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" Eric asked, looking up at Samantha Kelly. Commander Kelly stood rigid in her crisp blue uniform. "Yes, sir. My team verified it 3 times. The Vextal, Droger, and Mithran have been sabotaging our colony ships for the past 8 months. We've lost 17 vessels and over 2,000 lives." Eric sank into his chair in the embassy office. Through the large window behind him, the alien spires of Nexus Station gleamed in the light of 2 nearby suns. What had once seemed beautiful now felt threatening. "They've been smiling at us in council meetings while killing our people," Eric said quietly. "That's not all," Samantha continued. "We found evidence they're planning to restrict our expansion to just 3 more systems, while they've approved over 40 new colony worlds for their own species." Eric stood up suddenly. "We need to confront them at today's session." 3 hours later, Eric stood in the Grand Council chamber. 67 species were represented in the vast circular room, their seats arranged in rising tiers. Humans, as newcomers, were positioned near the bottom. "The United Earth government brings grave concerns to the Council today," Eric announced, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "We have evidence that 3 Council races have deliberately attacked our colony ships, resulting in thousands of human deaths." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Zarthal, the tall, 6-limbed High Chancellor, raised 2 of his upper appendages for silence. "Ambassador Donovan, these are serious accusations. Do you have proof?" "We do." Eric nodded to Samantha, who projected the evidence onto the main display. The chamber erupted with voices as images of damaged human ships and intercepted communications appeared. Eric noticed how the Vextal representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "These are obviously fabrications," hissed the Droger ambassador, his scaled face flushing deep purple. "Humans are known for their paranoia and aggression." "We expected denial," Eric replied. "But the evidence is clear." Zarthal studied the information with his 4 eyes. "This data is concerning. However, it requires further investigation before action can be taken." "Further investigation?" Samantha stepped forward, breaking protocol. "People are dying while you investigate." "Commander," Eric cautioned her, but he shared her frustration. 2 hours of debate followed, with various species taking sides. The accused races dismissed the evidence, while others called for a formal inquiry. In the end, Zarthal announced the formation of a committee to examine the claims, a process that would take months. Back on Earth, President Allison Wright reviewed the Council's response via secure quantum communication. "So they're going to study it to death," she said, her voice tired, "while more of our ships disappear." "That's their plan," Eric confirmed from the embassy. "The accused races have too many allies in the Council." President Wright stood up and walked to the window of the Oval Office. She watched rain falling on Washington, D.C., a city rebuilt after the climate wars. Humanity had survived extinction once already. They wouldn't face it again. "I've made my decision," she said. "Recall all diplomats immediately. Effective tomorrow, Earth is cutting all communications with the Galactic Council." "Madam President," Eric said cautiously, "that would violate a dozen treaties." "Treaties they've already broken by attacking our people," she replied firmly. "The time for talk is over. Tell our people to walk out mid-session tomorrow. Leave everything behind." The next day, Eric entered the council chamber one last time. As the Mithran representative was speaking about patience and procedure, Eric stood up. Every human diplomat in the chamber, 27 in total, did the same. Without a word, they walked toward the exits. "Ambassador Donovan." Zarthal called out, confusion evident in his voice. "What is the meaning of this?" Eric turned at the doorway. The entire chamber had fallen silent. "Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately." We will no longer participate in a system that protects killers and punishes victims. He dropped his communication device on the floor. It shattered, the sound echoing through the shock chamber. As the humans left, chaos erupted behind them. The first phase of humanity's new path in the galaxy had begun. 6 months passed since the humans walked out of the Galactic Council. 6 months of complete silence from Earth and all human colonies. No messages, no trade ships, no diplomatic signals. Nothing. High Chancellor Zarthal paced the length of his private chamber on Nexus Station. The four-armed alien skin had lost its healthy blue glow, now appearing pale and dull from stress. "Try again," he ordered his communications officer. The young Kutari technician's tentacles moved quickly over the control panel. Still no response, High Chancellor. All frequencies remained silent. Zarthal sighed. What about the envoys? The 7th diplomatic vessel returned today. Like the others, they couldn't even enter the Sol system. The outer defense perimeter has been massively expanded with automated weapon platforms. On the other side of the station, in a small, dimly lit bar frequented by traders and merchants, Gary Miller nursed his drink. He was one of only 500 humans stranded in Council space when the withdrawal happened. His small trading vessel had been docked at Nexus Station for repairs when Earth cut communications. "Another one?" asked the bartender, a reptilian Lexid with bright orange scales. "No thanks," Gary replied. "Credits are running low these days." The Lexid leaned closer. "I heard the Belinar are paying well for information about humans right now." Gary laughed bitterly. "I don't know anything useful. Earth didn't exactly share their plans with small-time traders like me." A shadow fell across the table. Gary looked up to see a tall Vextal in military uniform. The avian species had always made him nervous with their sharp beaks and predatory eyes. "Mr. Miller," the Vextal said smoothly, "I am Captain Rekthar. I believe we can help each other." Back in the council chambers, an emergency session had been called. Representatives from all 67 member species attended, the room filled with nervous chatter. "Order," Zarthal demanded, pounding his ceremonial staff on the floor. "We must address the human situation immediately." The Drogar ambassador rose from his seat. "The border colonies report that human worlds are going dark one by one. They've established some kind of energy barrier around each planet. Our trade networks are collapsing," added the Belnar representative, her delicate wings fluttering in agitation. "Human medical supplies have disappeared from the market. Prices have increased tenfold for remaining stock." Dr. Vexor, the council's chief scientist, stepped to the central platform. The elderly Kutari's skin changed colors rapidly, a sign of extreme distress. "I have detected unusual energy signatures from human space," he said, projecting a series of complex readings. "They appear to be establishing a new type of network between their worlds, completely independent of our jump gate system." Gasps echoed through the chamber. The Council's control of interstellar travel routes had been their greatest advantage over newer species for centuries. "That's impossible," a Mithran delegate objected. "They don't have the technology." "Apparently, they do now," Dr. Vexor replied simply. On a small trading outpost at the edge of Council space, a market seller screamed in pain as a crowd surrounded him. "Where are the human medicines?" demanded a mother holding a sick child. "My daughter will die without them." Similar scenes played out across thousands of worlds. The Council had never realized how dependent they had become on human goods, especially pharmaceuticals that other species couldn't replicate. In the private chambers of the Vextal Military Command, General Krivex slammed his fist on the table. "We should force our way into human space. They cannot be allowed to simply withdraw from galactic society." His advisors shifted uncomfortably. "The automated defenses they've established are unlike anything we've seen before," one officer said. "The scout ship we sent didn't even have time to send a distress signal." General Krivex narrowed his eyes. "Then we need better intelligence. Find every human still in our space. Extract whatever information they have." As night fell on Nexus Station, Gary Miller slipped through a maintenance corridor, his heart pounding. In his pocket was a small data chip, information the Vextall had forced from him. But they didn't know about the second chip, the one containing everything he'd learned about their plans. Now he just needed to find a way to get it to Earth. The tiny spy drone slipped through a gap in Earth's outer defenses. It was the size of a hummingbird, using experimental cloaking technology developed by the Mithran. For 3 days, it had been searching for a weakness, and finally found one. As the drone drifted toward Earth, its sensors recorded everything. Massive construction projects circled the planet. Strange platforms that didn't match any known council design floated in orbit. Ships of unusual configuration moved in organized patterns. Admiral Frank Morrison stood on the bridge of Earth's new flagship, overseeing the construction of the defensive grid. At 62, his hair had gone completely white, but his eyes remained sharp and clear. Section 7 is online, Admiral reported his second-in-command. Frank nodded. Good. That completes the Northern Hemisphere coverage. How's Dr. Patterson's team doing? She's asking for you, sir. Says it's urgent. 20 minutes later, Frank entered a vast laboratory complex built into the side of a mountain in Colorado. Dr. Olivia Patterson was waiting for him, her lab coat rumpled, her red hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She hadn't slept in 3 days. We did it, she said without greeting. The quantum fold drive works. Frank's eyes widened. Are you sure? We sent a test vessel to Alpha Centauri, and back in under 7 minutes, Olivia replied, grinning. No jump gates, no council technology. Just pure human innovation. The Admiral let out a long breath. That changes everything. The small council spy drone recorded this conversation before continuing its mission. It navigated through tight security to a massive facility in the Pacific Ocean, where Lisa Chen, head of UEG's Resource Division, was implementing humanity's resource independence plan. The synthetic protein farms are at 87% efficiency, Lisa informed her team. The mineral extraction from seawater is working better than expected. We'll be completely self-sufficient within 3 more months. The drone transmitted everything back to Council space before a security scan finally detected it. The drone was destroyed, but not before sending its vital intelligence. In the Council emergency room, the information caused panic. They've developed their own FTL system, Dr. Vexor announced, his tentacles writhing in agitation. This breaks our monopoly on interstellar travel. And they're creating resource independence, added the Belnar representative. Soon they won't need anything from us. The Vextall military commander stood up, his feathers bristling. We must act now, before they grow stronger. I propose immediate military action to force humans back into the galactic community. Zarthal raised his hands for silence. The humans have cut themselves off, yes, but they haven't shown aggression. Military action could provoke a war. We're already seeing the effects of their withdrawal, said Alexid Trader. My world is experiencing food shortages. 3 medical centers have closed. Our economy is in freefall without human goods. On the human colony world New Eden, Governor Carlos Mendez inspected the new quantum fold communication tower. It allowed instant communication between human worlds without using council relay stations. All colonies are now connected, his assistant reported. The Sol system, Proxima colonies, and all 14 outer settlements. Carlos smiled. President Wright's plan is working perfectly. For the first time, humanity can move and communicate without council oversight. Back on Earth, a special intelligence unit intercepted and decoded a message from Gary Miller. President Wright reviewed it personally. So the Vextall are planning to force their way into our space, she said grimly. Just as we suspected. Yes, Madam President, replied her advisor. But Miller also provided the patrol schedules and defense codes for their border stations. President Wright's expression hardened. Send that information to Admiral Morrison immediately. If they want to test our resolve, they'll find we're more than ready. In his hidden laboratory beneath Geneva, Dr. Jack Wilson made the final adjustments to a device no larger than a baseball. It pulsed with blue light. "Is it ready?" asked the military observer. Jack nodded slowly. "Yes, but I hope we never have to use it. This technology could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever." The observer picked up a secure communication device. "I'll inform the president. Project Prometheus is operational." 1 year had passed since humanity's withdrawal. The Grand Council chamber no longer felt impressive to Zarthal. Instead, the vast empty spaces and ornate decorations seemed wasteful, even foolish. The unity of 67 species that the chamber symbolized was breaking apart before his eyes. "The council will come to order," Zarthal shouted, pounding his staff. No one listened. On one side of the chamber, the representatives of the Belnar Kuteri and Lexid were in a heated argument with the military races. These three species had depended most heavily on human trade. Their economies were in ruins, their people suffering. "We demand a reconciliation mission," the Belnar ambassador called out, her delicate wings fluttering in agitation. "We must restore relations with humans before more of our people die." Across the chamber, General Krevex of the Vextal rose to his impressive height, his feathers bristling. "Weakness. The humans need to be taught respect. They cannot simply withdraw from galactic civilization when it suits them." "And how do you propose to teach them?" asked the Lexid representative, his orange scales flushing dark red with anger. "Your last scout ships never returned." The argument escalated. The Drogar ambassador shoved the Kuturi representative. Security forces rushed forward as more officials joined the fray. Zarthal watched in despair as the council chamber descended into chaos. For 10,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained peace. Now it was falling apart over the actions of the galaxy's newest species. On the edges of human space, Captain Peter Jackson guided his stealth ship close to a Vextal military outpost. His vessel was tiny, barely large enough for 3 people, and covered in experimental materials that absorbed scanner waves. "Recording everything," whispered Lieutenant Susan Davis, her fingers dancing over the sensor controls. "Their fleet movements, communication patterns, everything." Peter nodded, keeping the ship steady in the shadow of a small moon. They had been conducting these surveillance missions for months, gathering intelligence on council activities. What they had learned was troubling. "Look at that," Susan said suddenly. "Another Bellinar merchant ship arriving. That's the 3rd one this week." "The fractures are growing wider," Peter replied, "just as we predicted." Meanwhile, deep in council space, Keith Adams pretended to be interested in the artwork hanging in the Belnar embassy. He had been living undercover as a stranded human merchant for months, slowly building trust with the Belnar, Kuteri, and Lexid. "The Vextal delegation refused our proposal again," said Ambassador Tegzel, joining Keith by the window. The slender Bellinar looked exhausted, her normally luminescent skin dull with stress. "They insist on a military solution." Keith nodded sympathetically. "That would be disastrous for everyone." "We know," Tegzel replied. "That's why we're forming a separate faction. The trading species are breaking away from the military bloc. The council is splitting in two." Keith kept his expression neutral, but inside he felt a surge of satisfaction. Earth's strategy was working perfectly. Back on Earth, Dr. Sharon Evans prepared her report for President Wright. As the UEG's leading genopsychologist, she had predicted exactly how each council species would react to humanity's withdrawal. "The Bellinar Kuteri and Lexid are forming a splinter faction, exactly as we anticipated," she explained. "They depend too heavily on human goods to maintain a hardline stance. Meanwhile, the military species grow more aggressive, but increasingly isolated." President Wright nodded. "And the timeline?" "Perhaps 2 more months before formal fracturing occurs," Sharon replied. "Once that happens, we can approach the trade factions separately." In the council chamber, the security forces finally restored order. Representatives returned to their seats, many showing injuries from the fight. Zarthal looked out at the divided chamber with all four of his eyes filled with worry. "This session is adjourned," he announced, his voice heavy. "We will reconvene tomorrow to discuss." "No," shouted the Draugr ambassador, rising again. "We vote now on military action against the humans." The Belinar ambassador stood in opposition, "and we demand to vote on formal separation from any species that attacks humans." Zarthal watched helplessly as representatives began shouting again. A Mithran delegate threw a datapad at a Kuturi. Fighting erupted once more, worse than before. The Great Galactic Council, ruler of the stars for 10 millennia, was tearing itself apart. Captain Peter Jackson moved silently through the dimly lit corridor of the secret Vextal facility. His team of 5 had infiltrated the base 3 hours ago, using stealth technology developed by Dr. Patterson. So far, they remained undetected. "This way," whispered Susan Davis, checking her scanner. "The main server room should be ahead." They reached a heavy security door. Another team member, Paul Martins, placed a small device against the control panel. The door slid open without an alarm. "We have 15 minutes before the security sweep," Peter reminded them as they entered. The server room was large and cold. Blue lights blinked from hundreds of data units. Susan quickly located the primary access terminal and connected her specialized decryption unit. "I'm in," she said after a tense minute. "Downloading now." Data flowed into their secure storage device. Most of it was encrypted, but even the file names sent chills down Peter's spine. Human genetic vulnerabilities, species-specific bioweapon, Earth atmospheric delivery system. "They're planning to kill us all," Paul whispered, looking over Susan's shoulder. Susan continued downloading. "Not just plans. They've already developed these weapons. Look at these test results." Peter's face hardened. "Get everything. Earth needs to see this." At the United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva, Daniel Cooper sorted through the intelligence from Captain Jackson's team. As the UEG's communication specialist, he had the grim task of preparing evidence packages about the Council's true intentions. "These bioweapons were designed years ago," he told President Wright during the emergency briefing, "even before first contact. They've been planning to subjugate or eliminate humans from the beginning." President Wright's face remained calm, but her eyes burned with controlled anger. "Prepare the broadcasts. It's time for Operation Truth Cascade." "Yes, Madam President," Daniel replied. "The packages are ready for transmission to all friendly Council species." In his small apartment on Nexus Station, Keith Adams received an encrypted message from Earth. It was time. He sent a signal to his Belinar contact, Ambassador Tegzel. They met an hour later in a quiet park area. The tall, slender alien looked nervously around before speaking. "Your message said it was urgent," she said. Keith nodded. "My government is ready to share critical information with your faction. But first, I need to know if you're willing to take a significant risk." Tegzel's luminescent skin pulsed with emotion. "My people are dying without human medicines. Our economy has collapsed. What more is there to lose? Your leadership role in the Council." "For one," Keith replied, "what I'm about to share will change everything." He showed her a small datapad with selected files from the Vextal facility. Tegzel's 4 eyes widened as she read. "This can't be true," she whispered. "It is," Keith assured her. "And there's more. Much more. Your people have been lied to for years." Tegzel was silent for a long moment. "What does your government want?" "Safe passage for a Belnar ship to Earth, carrying you and representatives from the Kuturi and Lexid. President Wright wishes to speak with you directly." 2 days later, a Belnar diplomatic vessel disappeared from Council space. The military faction assumed it had been destroyed in an accident. They were wrong. Meanwhile, Security Chief Alan Waters stood in the UEG broadcast center, watching as technicians prepared to transmit worldwide. "Operation Truth Cascade is ready, Stir," reported his assistant. Alan nodded. "Begin transmission to all Council worlds simultaneously." Across thousands of planets, regular broadcasts were suddenly interrupted. Citizens of all species watched in horror as evidence of their leaders' plans appeared on screens everywhere. Test results of bioweapons, secret military plans, recordings of council meetings where the extermination of humans was discussed casually. On Nexus Station, ordinary citizens gathered in public squares, watching the broadcasts in stunned silence. A droger merchant turned to a Kutari standing nearby. "Did you know about this?" he asked. The Kutari's tentacles twitched in distress. "No, did you?" All across council space, the question spread, followed by anger. Within hours, protests began. By the next day, riots erupted on dozens of worlds as citizens demanded answers from their representatives. The Galactic Council, already fracturing, now faced rebellion from within. The human fleet appeared at the edge of council space without warning. One moment, the border was clear. The next, 500 warships materialized in perfect formation. Each ship was unlike anything the council races had ever seen. Sleek, dark vessels with strange energy patterns flowing across their hulls. On Nexus Station, alarms blared as sensors detected the massive fleet. The military command center erupted into chaos. "How did they get past our early warning systems?" demanded General Krivex, his feathers standing on end with agitation. "Unknown, sir," replied a nervous officer. "They didn't use jump gates. They just appeared." The central screen showed the human fleet holding position, making no aggressive moves but clearly ready for battle. Then a message came through on all frequencies, in all languages of the council races. General Linda Harrison stood on the bridge of the UEG flagship Determination. At 53, she had fought in Earth's last war before first contact. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back in a tight bun, her uniform crisp and perfect. "Transmission is live, General," reported her communications officer. Linda nodded and looked directly into the camera. "This is General Linda Harrison of the United Earth Government Defense Force. For 15 months, humanity has watched and waited as the Galactic Council debated our fate. We have now confirmed what we long suspected. Certain council races planned our destruction from the moment of first contact." The message played across thousands of worlds simultaneously. Council citizens, already in turmoil from Operation Truth Cascade, watched in stunned silence. "We now present our terms," Linda continued. 1. The immediate removal of all officials involved in planning genocide against humans. 2. Dissolution of all anti-human policies and programs. 3. New trade agreements that recognize Earth's sovereignty and independence. In the Council Emergency Chamber, representatives argued fiercely. The military faction, led by the Vextal, Droger, and Mithran, demanded immediate military action against the human fleet. "We cannot surrender to their demands," shouted General Krivex. "It would destroy the Council's authority forever." "The Council's authority is already destroyed," replied the Belnar temporary representative calmly. "Your secret plans to commit genocide have seen to that." As the argument continued, Vice President Nathan Green led a small diplomatic team to a neutral location at the edge of council space. There, representatives from the friendly council races, the Belnar, Kuteri, and Lexid, waited nervously. "Thank you for coming," Nathan said simply. "This is not a negotiation. Your leaders have already seen our terms." The Lexid ambassador's orange scales pulsed with anxiety. "The military faction will never agree to these terms. They are preparing for war even now." "We know," Nathan replied, "but we hoped your species would choose a different path." The Kutari representative's tentacles twisted in what humans had learned was a sign of agreement. "We wish to formally separate from the military faction. Our people have suffered enough." While the diplomatic meeting continued, protests raged across council space. On dozens of worlds, citizens surrounded government buildings, demanding the removal of officials named in the human broadcasts. In the Council Military Command Center, General Krivex made his decision. "Prepare all available ships," he ordered. "We will strike at the human fleet immediately." His second-in-command looked shocked. "Sir, we don't have enough ships assembled to match their fleet." "They are bluffing," Krivex insisted. "Their technology cannot be as advanced as they want us to believe. Once we attack, the other Council races will be forced to join us." 3 hours later, 200 Council warships approached the human fleet. General Krivex sent a final message to the human flagship. "This is your only warning. Return to your space immediately or be destroyed." On the bridge of the Determination, General Harrison received the message with a grim expression. "They've made their choice," she said quietly. "Signal all ships. Activate defensive systems only. Let's show them exactly what they're facing." As the Council fleet moved into attack position, the human ships began to glow with strange blue energy. Whatever happened next would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. General Krivex watched from his command ship as the Council fleet moved toward the human positions. 200 of the finest warships ever built by the combined technological might of the oldest spacefaring races in the galaxy. It should have been enough. It had to be enough. "All ships in attack formation," reported his second-in-command. "Weapons charged and ready." "Begin the attack," ordered Krivex. "Target their largest vessels first." The Council ships fired in perfect synchronization. Hundreds of energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked across space toward the human fleet. For a moment, it seemed like nothing could survive such a massive barrage. Then the impossible happened. Around each human ship, a shimmering blue field appeared. The Council weapons simply disappeared into the fields without effect. Not a single human vessel showed any damage. "Impossible," gasped Krivex. "Fire again. All weapons." A second barrage met the same fate. Then the human ships began to move, but instead of advancing as a group, they simply vanished. One moment they were there, the next they were gone. "Where did they go?" Krivex demanded, his feathers bristling with fear. His answer came seconds later, when human ships began appearing throughout the Council formation. They materialized beside Council vessels, behind them, even directly in front of them. The perfect Council formation was shattered in moments. Aboard the human flagship, Defiance, Major Cynthia Ward directed the counter-offensive. Her dark skin glistened with sweat as she calmly issued orders. "All ships, defensive measures only," she commanded. "Disable their engines and weapon systems. No unnecessary destruction." The human ships fired precise beams of white energy that cut through Council shields like they weren't there. One by one, Council vessels lost power, their engines and weapon systems shutting down. "Sir, we've lost 30% of our fleet already," reported a Vextall officer to General Krivex. "None destroyed, but they've been completely disabled." Krivex couldn't believe what he was seeing. The humans were jumping their ships instantly across space, ignoring the laws of physics as the Council understood them. Dr. Patterson's quantum fold technology allowed human vessels to appear anywhere in battle space without warning. "Order the fleet to retreat," Krivex finally said, his voice hollow. "We can't, sir. They've surrounded us completely." As the battle continued, images of the conflict were being broadcast across all Council worlds. Kyle Bennett, the UEG media director, had ensured that every civilian in Council space could witness the one-sided engagement. "Keep the feeds open," he instructed his team from their position on a stealth observation vessel. "The Council citizens need to see that resistance is futile, but that we're showing restraint." On thousands of worlds, Council citizens watched in amazement as the supposedly invincible Council fleet was systematically disabled, without a single ship being destroyed. The human technology was so far beyond their understanding that it seemed almost magical. After 2 hours, 70% of the Council fleet was powerless, drifting in space. Not one human ship had been damaged. Not a single Council crew member had been killed. General Krivex stared at the tactical display in shock. His entire career, his entire understanding of military power, had been based on the assumption that the Council races had the most advanced technology in the galaxy. That assumption had just been shattered completely. "Sir," his second-in-command said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship." Cynthia Ward's face appeared on the screen. Her expression was calm, almost sympathetic. "General Krivex, this demonstration is over. You have seen only a fraction of our capabilities, and we have taken great care to avoid casualties. We could have destroyed your entire fleet in the first minutes of engagement. Instead, we chose restraint." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Your remaining ships will power down weapons immediately. Your vessels will be towed to a safe location where your crews will be transferred to transport ships. You and your senior officers will be detained for trial for planning genocide against humans." Krivex knew he had no choice. With trembling hands, he reached for the communication controls. "All ships," he said, his voice breaking, "power down weapons and surrender. I repeat, surrender immediately." The battle was over. The Council fleet had been defeated without a single death on either side. 3 months after the battle, the grand chamber that once housed the Galactic Council had been transformed. The rising tiers of seats were gone, replaced by a circular arrangement where all species sat at the same level. The ornate decorations celebrating the founding races had been removed. In their place hung a simple banner with the words "Galactic Cooperative" in the languages of all member species. Ambassador Eric Donovan walked into the chamber for the first time in nearly 2 years. So much had changed since he had walked out, shattering his communication device on the floor. Now he returned as humanity's representative to the new cooperative. "Ambassador Donovan," greeted Tegzel of the Belinar. "Welcome back." Eric smiled at the slender alien he now considered a friend. "Thank you. It feels strange to be here again." "I imagine it does," she replied. "But much has changed for the better." Indeed it had. After the defeat of the Council fleet, the military faction had collapsed completely. The conspirator species, the Vextal, Droger, and Mithran, were now under strict oversight. Their military had been disbanded, their territories placed under cooperative management. Their leaders who had planned genocide were awaiting trial. The chamber filled as representatives from 58 species took their seats. Many familiar faces were gone, replaced by new leaders chosen after the revelations of Operation Truth Cascade. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Outside the chamber, citizens across the galaxy were recovering from the upheaval. Human medicines had returned to galactic markets, easing the suffering caused by their absence. But now the distribution was controlled directly by human corporations, with strict regulations and fair pricing. On Earth, President Allison Wright prepared to address her people. Her advisors had urged her to take a victory lap, to celebrate humanity's triumph. She had refused. "Fellow citizens of Earth and all human colonies," she began, her image broadcast to every human world. "Today marks our official return to galactic society. Not as junior members of an outdated council, but as equal partners in a new cooperative." She paused, her expression serious. "We have demonstrated our resolve and our capabilities. No species will threaten humanity again. But power brings responsibility. We did not withdraw from the stars to conquer them, but to ensure our rightful place among them." In the Science District of Geneva, Dr. Ryan Garcia welcomed scientists from 12 different species. They gathered nervously in the large conference room, unsure what to expect. Many had never seen a human in person before. "Welcome to Earth," Ryan said warmly. "You are the first participants in our new multi-species scientific exchange program. Together, we will share knowledge that benefits all our peoples." The visiting scientists relaxed visibly at his friendly tone. One by one, they introduced themselves and their fields of study. The walls that had separated species for centuries were beginning to come down. In a small holding cell on Nexus Station, former High Chancellor Zarthal sat alone. His once vibrant blue skin had turned pale gray. His 4 eyes stared blankly at the wall. He had lost everything: his position, his power, his legacy. A human guard brought him his daily meal. Zarthal looked up at the human's face. "I never understood your kind," he said quietly. "How could a species so young advance so quickly? How could you develop in decades what took us millennia?" The guard didn't answer. He wasn't permitted to engage with the prisoner. But another voice responded from the doorway. "Because we had to." Ambassador Donovan stood there, having come directly from the cooperative session. "Your species had 10,000 years of peace to develop slowly," Eric continued. "Humanity had to evolve quickly or die. Our history is filled with conflicts that pushed us to innovate or perish." Zarthal considered this. "And now? What happens now?" "Now we build something better," Eric replied. "Together, as equals." Later that day, in the new cooperative hall, representatives from all 58 remaining species gathered around a circular table. There were no raised platforms, no special seats for privileged races. For the first time in galactic history, all species stood on equal footing. A new era had begun, not through endless talk, but because humanity had finally found its voice among the stars.